My name is Jeffrey Sidoris, and this is Process Driven. In the last episode, I had a conversation with Glenda Cruz from North Atlantic Explorers, who I was introduced to by a listener of On Taking Pictures. In this episode, my guest was recommended to me by one of my favorite photographers, John Keatley. A month or so ago, I reached out to John and asked if he knew anyone who he thought would be interesting for me to talk to. He responded with two names, one of whom is my guest on this episode. And whether you know Tom Deslongchamp as an illustrator, an animator, or even a ninja, he's every bit an artist, both in the work that he makes and in how and why he makes it. In this episode, Tom and I talk about the importance of play, wrestling with labels and self-identification, and his need to be in love with what he makes. Here's my conversation with Tom Deslongchamp.
Please listen carefully.
Yeah, I have a lot of experience on a trampoline, so you're probably right. I'm a pro.
Yeah, not so much. I'm not so much with the pro trampoline usage.
I wanted to be a stuntman when I was a kid. That was my first. Besides ninja, I wanted to be a stuntman.
Sure.
You know? Yeah, but didn't work out.
Did you embark on the ninja training? Like, did you get like shurikens and nunchucks and stuff? Were you practicing, or did it not get that far?
I actually did invest in a ninja suit, like a real one, not just like a Halloween costume.
Right.
Because I had one of those. I don't remember what it's called, but it was a martial arts catalog, and you could buy swords and.
But you could buy swords out of a catalog? That sounds like danger waiting to happen.
It had little like, this is illegal in this state, and this.
Right.
But yeah.
And how old were you at the time?
Oh, I was like 10.
Oh man.
So I just liked ninja movies and wanted to be cool.
Right. So when did the dream of Stuntman change?
I'd say it was actually 7th grade when I did a report on Vincent van Gogh. And,
sure.
I'd always, loved art and everything.
Well, it's the obvious connection of Stuntman and Vincent van Gogh.
Yeah. It was the first time where I was like, wow, this guy who lived like 100 years ago was doing art and no one gave a shit. And he did it till he died. And then now he's like super famous, even though he's not alive. And I was just like blown away by his commitment to what
was
he
that
was
the
doing.
First time that you recognized art as a thing, like that art existed as something almost transcendent?
Yeah, I think that's right, because I was acquainted with art. I'd been drawing since I was like 2 or 3 or something, and I've always explored the medium of drawing, but I didn't see it as something I wanted to pursue as a passion, you know what I mean? And it was just kind of something I did, something I was good at. And so that changed when I learned about his life. And
so that was the turning point of you saying, this is what I want to do with my life.
Well, I wouldn't say that I knew it was what I wanted to do with my life, but it was what I wanted to do at that moment.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So I started doing self-portraits, and that was the first time I did observational drawing.
Mm-hmm.
And because I had just drawn cartoons and, characters and things like stuff I'd seen on TV, seeing if I could draw it, that kind of thing.
Sure.
And but then I did these self-portraits, and it like kind of blew my mind that I could render something that I saw, and it was incredible to me.
Was there a specific aha moment, a specific drawing that made that possible in your mind?
There's one that comes to mind, and it's just a self-portrait that I did in my room, looking in the mirror. I think I had a beanie on, and I was pretty dorky, but I just did the self-portrait. I remember thinking that my eyes actually looked like my eyes, and it was just bizarre to look at a drawing that I had created that was me, and it felt kind of like me. And so it was a simple thing, and but it's kind of stuck with me, and I mean, in relation to what I'm doing now as far as portraits and stuff. But
sure.
Yeah.
So when somebody asks you, because I really don't like this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway because I'm curious to what your response is going to be. When somebody asks you, what do you do? How do you answer that? And has your answer changed over time?
Yeah, I would say it definitely has changed. Like, back then when I was a teenager, I was like, I want to be an artist. But then I learned about a program called Flash, an animation program, and it exploded my brain because I had tried making stop motion animations on my parents' video camera by just clicking record, like on off.
Right.
On off.
Right.
And,
not so good.
I could get like 2 frames per second, you know what I mean? And but and that was exciting to me at the time. But then with Flash, total freedom. I could draw frames. I could put audio in it. It was just like it opened up everything to me. And then from that point on, and I was kind of doing art and animation, but the animation part was actually making money for me because there was a demand for it. And and then when I went to college, I was at RISD, and that era I just identified as student. So it's like there's these different eras of my life where I'm a student, but then when I came out of college, I studied animation, so that was my major. When I came out of college, I was like, I'm an animator. Like that
you self-identified as an animator at that point.
Yeah. That was like I'm an animator. I want to be a director. Like I want to create things in the medium of animation. That's my gift. I want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But then I kind of hit like the post-school optimism, spike of like I'm gonna do things.
Right.
I kind of nosedived into like, oh, I'm working now, and like I was working at an ad agency doing doing everything. Like I was doing video editing, animation, I was building websites, I was recording audio, I was editing audio, I was making music, I was like doing everything in house that I could basically save them a buck not having to hire someone.
Right.
And
get Tom to do it. He'll do it.
Yeah, I was kind of just the straight out of school kid that could do all this stuff. And and it taught me a lot, but I wasn't really that happy there. And I realized quickly that I wasn't really an ad guy, an ad agency guy. Like we would end up hiring contractors to, do a photo shoot, or John Keatley, for instance. We hired him for stuff.
That's the connection to John.
Yeah, that's how I met him.
Yeah. Okay.
And
he's the reason that you and I are talking.
Yeah, and I love that. I was just realizing that as I stumbled upon this, but when I met him, I was like, he struck me as a person who was doing what I wanted to do, not literally, like because I didn't want to be a photographer, but I was like, I want to be that guy who's really good at what they do and is brought in to do what they do.
Right.
And then he gets to leave.
Right. And has such a passion for it.
Yeah.
I know very few people who love what they do as much as John Keatley does.
Yeah. And I loved talking to him, and he was inspiring to me, and he just had a stability in what he was doing, and a focus that I was in love with. And
so what were you at the ad agency? How were you, if somebody asked then, what do you do?
Well, we were all called art directors.
Okay.
But not art director in this. The art director has different meanings in different places. But for us, that was a pool of creatives,
right,
that would jump on projects and direct art, but it was basically just doing it, not really
very similar to uni. When I mean that's our labels were very similar. I went from working on the Flash team as a contractor to a full-time position as an art director. But the day-to-day didn't change very much.
Exactly. And so I mean it was crazy because I mean I was just doing so many different kinds of things, and then I was still kind of doing freelance, or not really, well, a mix of freelance and my own personal projects, because I always have a personal project going. It's like stuff I just am always creating. I have to create things. And so I was I would stay up late making my own animations and then come to work and do all that stuff. And I was
Right.
like really tired, and really like, man, I need to get my own thing going, but I don't know how, and I was just trying to figure out how to do the next project, personal project, or get a good job, because I did like a couple projects that I'm really proud of in that time. Like in 2009, I did a music video for this band called Jukebox, and um, that's one of my favorite pieces that I've done because it had like a truth that just appeared out of nowhere, and I made this story, and it kind of flowed out of me.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't pay me very much, but I felt completely determined to do it. I knew I needed to do it. I loved the song. It would just everything was connecting in that. Um, but art. I mean, I guess to contrast, like art was in drawing and portraits. All this whole time, I'm keeping a sketchbook in my pocket, and I'm doing drawings all the time. Like ask anyone that I was around through those years until now, like I've always had a sketchbook, and I'm always sketching people that I see, but I wouldn't really do anything with it. It was always just to keep it flowing, because I knew drawing was valuable, and I learned that in college. That ideas come out of drawing for me.
Not necessarily valuable as a skill, but as a bridge to other things, although as a skill as well. But not, I mean, there are multiple meanings to the value that you had for drawing. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was just challenging myself in a private scenario, and not really having the pressure to show people. And when I look at, I have like piles and piles and piles of sketchbooks, and they're just kind of funny to look through because they have one page will be a couple ideas that I never did. And then the next page is like a sketch of my friend. And then the next page is like a weird cartoon. There was like no filter. And I love just going back to them because it's kind of pure. And some of them are, not very good, like a lot of it isn't good to me. But it kept that juice flowing.
Right.
As far as training my eye and seeing the world and learning how to compose. And I didn't really know if anything would come of it. I was really inspired by the artist David Shrigley. I don't know if you're familiar with
I'm not familiar
work.
with him.
Check out his stuff. His
David
work
Shrigley. Okay.
David Shrigley. He's English artist. Amazing, so funny. Like, I mean, his stuff is crude and simple and kind of childlike. A lot of humor, and he's always inspired me. And I'd say that a lot of my early sketchbooks were deeply inspired by him because it was just kind of a no rules humor, but also, honestly capturing things and kind of mixing it all up and interpreting things and playing around. It's just playing,
Right.
Being playful. So back to, you were asking me how I can't remember which question.
How the identification changed over time.
Well,
like how would you identify yourself now? If somebody walked up and said, "Oh, so what do you do?" Which is such a presumptuous question anyway. Like that's the only thing that gives you value, right? But it is a convention.
It's difficult. I have a hard time with it because I often use the catch-all artist because that includes my animation and it includes my portraits, but and it has an open-endedness to it, like, because I can make any kind of art. Like,
Sure.
I mean, I'm making a lot of experiments right now that I don't even share, and so who knows what it could develop into. But in certain job circumstances, I'm an animator, and I'll people will reach out to me as an animator,
Mm-hmm.
and people will reach out to me as a artist, as an illustrator even, and I really don't identify as an illustrator, honestly, because I don't draw everything. I mean, I do specific kinds of things. I can draw anything potentially, but I don't know if it's a good fit, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's confusing, and I try not to worry about it too much. Like with managing social media, like my bio and all that stuff.
Right. Right.
I try not to overthink that, because there's so many people overthinking it all the time, and it's just kind of annoying and obnoxious. Like,
right.
when it's just like, I mean, I don't want to make fun of anyone, and I've done it myself, but it's just kind of like you just want to be like, I'm a maker, man. I just make stuff. I'm
right.
any medium, but it sounds pretentious and kind of dumb. And so I don't know. I've just resigned myself to, I'm an artist. Visual artist.
Right.
But
is being an artist more important than making art? Is there a distinction in that for you?
That question explodes my brain. I don't even know I don't even know what that means. Wait, that reminds me of the question of, what do you think of art for art's sake? And that question's always exploded my brain.
Right.
And I feel like I still don't understand it, because I do what I do because I have a passion for it. I don't do anything because I'm trying to sell it, or there's a market for it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's never been a motivation for me. There are times where I'm like, well, maybe someone would like this and maybe someone would buy this, but it's never like the reason I push materials and try new things. And
mm-hmm.
I do it because it's like walking in a foreign woods. You just want to like see what's behind that tree and what's under that rock or whatever.
Right.
And at the moment, I do feel pressure from time to time to choose an identity and be like,
right.
I'm an animator,
right,
or I'm an artist. And but the truth is, I can't side with any one at this point. But maybe in 10 years, I'll just be primarily doing art, or maybe in 10 years, I'll primarily be making animation or directing short films or a TV show or something. I don't know. Like, I'm open to all of those possibilities, but it's kind of comes down to like the right thing at the right time, and whether I'm working with the right people, or
right.
So yeah, I don't know. I don't have a solid answer.
I don't either. And it's
Yeah.
one of the reasons that I asked it, because I struggle with it myself. I struggle with, first of all, I have a very tenuous relationship with the word art, and I'm hesitant to label anything that I do art. And I don't know why. It's something that I've struggled with for a long time, but I tend to have the belief that whether or not it's art is not for me to decide. It's for the viewer to decide.
Yeah.
And I don't know when that changed, because, very similar to you, I wanted to be an animator for Disney. I wanted to, that was my things for years when I was little.
Yeah.
And I didn't make a distinction between drawing for Disney or painting a picture that may hang somewhere. I didn't understand why those two things were different.
Yeah. Well, I don't think there has to be a difference. I was just thinking about it. The labels are more for consumption, in the sense that when someone needs to hire you, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
mm-hmm.
it's like a way of indexing someone's services.
Right.
I mean, so it's I guess that's why I've come back to artists, because it's the simplest, most basic way to label my creativity.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even like saying creativity, just like you're saying about art, like the word art.
Right,
Like,
right.
let's be creative. Let's have, it
Right.
sounds like some kind of kid kit, like
Right.
art kit or something. But the truth is there's something kind of cool about dumb, simple things like, let's make art. Like, yeah, that could sound like a kid activity, but making good art sometimes means act like pretending that you're a child again,
Mm-hmm.
like in the way you see things. And you can be a jerk about it and say that it's dorky or but I think a lot of the best art comes from a place of innocence, of resigning yourself to giving up what you think and letting yourself be stupid or unaware,
Right, right.
and I mean, I use a lot of people don't realize this, but I for my portraits I use Crayola markers primarily.
Yeah, I was
uh,
kind of blown away when you told me that when
yeah
we first spoke.
yeah it's very, I mean, it's a complex process, but it's very basic tools, um and it kind of, it's there's just so much to it that I've found over time, because it sounds really dumb. Like, it's like,
Ah,
I
give it
mean,
a shot. Go ahead, describe
there
it.
was a artist. I mean, there was Huffington Post did an article about me last summer, and it's just like, artist uses Crayola markers, to make vibrant portraits or something like that. And it sounds kind of gimmicky, like, wow,
Right.
he makes cool art with these child
Kind of link
instruments.
baity.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
really don't like that kind of stuff. But the truth is, it comes back to consumption and
Sure.
labeling so that people can find it and that people can grab onto it. And that's a completely different world. But anyways, back to my tools. It was never a overarching scheme of any kind to, oh, it would be cool if I made great like art that I really like and that other people like, and it's
Right.
all just using this stuff. I did
Right,
it
right.
because
I need
I
a
was at
hashtag I can work with.
yeah,
You know?
I was at work. I was working full time, not at the agency, but I was working at a software company doing animation. Uh, and I would often take coffee breaks or art breaks, because I'd pull out my sketchbook and just start drawing. And I would draw my coworker Mike Wern, and he was
These are terrific portraits. I love these. I would buy a book of these portraits.
Yeah, that's one of my kind of long-term ideas of, or hopes, I guess you could say, is maybe someday consolidating it all into a book and kind of writing about it too. And because Mike's a really good friend, and it was a really unlikely, well, unsuspecting creative partnership. I mean, kind of more one way.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's not really drawing them. He's just a subject, and
Right.
it's a passive collaboration. And
How did
but
you approach him initially to do it? Was he aware of it initially? Did you set out to say, "Hey, I'd like to draw you every day. Are you cool with this?"
well, I had been working with him for a year or so
Mm-hmm.
already, and
Mm-hmm.
and we were our so when I interviewed at this company, me and him, like, it was an interview where they would bring in different people from the team with me individually so that they could get to know me
Sure.
and just decide whether they like me.
Right. Right.
And me and Mike, during my interview, became friends. Like, it was we talked for like an hour,
Wow.
and then they invited me to lunch, or maybe I'm mixing things up. Maybe that was after I hired, but we were just like talking nonstop and became like friends instantly. And he's there's a pretty significant age gap. He's like 45 and or 44, and I'm 31, but we totally relate and enjoy each other's company, and we're just great friends. We don't work together anymore, but we hang out like twice a month or so. And
That's
uh,
cool.
but back to I started drawing him, and he was kind of a little, he was entertained by it. Like what I would do is there were a couple times where I drew him from life, just looking at him, and jotted down a little drawing really quickly and showed it to him, and he would kind of think it was funny. But then there was a point where I started taking pictures of him, where I would just like hold up my iPhone to his face.
Right. How'd that go?
Well, that was weird. That was weirder at first, but it was kind of like when you do it to like your sister or your brother, where
right.
they're like, "What are you doing?" But they're not like angry, or
right.
They're not offended.
So he just kind of went with it.
Yeah, and he was embarrassed and self-conscious at first, but he trusted me because we're friends.
Mm-hmm.
And there was this change where I had, up until that point for years, staunchly resisted drawing from photos, because in school we were told not to do that so that we could train our eyes how to really see.
Sure.
And so I kind of carried that as a rule, but I had been drawing from life like forever, and I kind of had this like, okay, I'm just gonna draw from photos now and see how that goes. But what happened was, since I had drawn from my eye the whole time, I had all of that experience and understanding, and then now I could really kind of focus in on the graphic image instead of just doing an exercise. And this was a big change in like, it was like 2012 or somewhere around there.
Did the work change stylistically as a result of it?
Oh yeah. Things got way more refined. I mean, there's a progression, and you can see it in the Mike series. And I didn't really mention it for anyone who's listening. It's daily Mike drawing hashtag on Instagram and all that. But yeah, when you go back to the beginning, it's a lot more like it changes so much, like from drawing to drawing, because I was experimenting, and I'm still experimenting now. But it kind of reached you can see it kind of even out, after like 2 years. And
was the experimentation conscious? I mean, were you giving yourself creative hurdles on each drawing, or did you just let yourself go where you wanted to go?
What I would do was, I started with I always drew with a pen so that I would commit to what I drew in the past, like draw with my eye and draw with a pen. So I have to run with what I do.
Wow. Serious.
And so that did that, for a long time. But then with this, I was like, maybe I'll use a pencil now, and maybe I'll draw from a photo so I can focus in on exactly how this image looks, And but then there was, after a couple drawings, and I walked around the office, and I went into a conference room, and there was this crappy red marker sitting on the desk, and I snagged it and thought, well, maybe I'll add a little color, And and I have to mention at this point that I was very inspired by this Tumblr account called No Talking Please. The please is PLZ, I think. And I don't know, you might want to double check that. But if you search for No Talking Please art, you'll probably find it. But anyways, it's this guy, I think, I can't remember where he lives. He's mysterious. I don't really know anything about him, and I don't even know what he looks like. And to be completely honest, I don't even follow him anymore. But at that time, his drawings and his art blew my mind into pieces, and I just couldn't get enough of what he was doing. And so it was just so interesting to be so inspired by something that's different than what I wanted to do, but the feeling that was coming through it all was what was motivating me. You know what I mean? And I thought, man, I want to make something that people can feel when they look at it. And that's, what I think a lot of like the best art does, right? You feel something when you look at it. And I'm really kind of snobby and picky about, I really like my wife, she's like a more of the designer angle. She's an illustrator designer, but she'll look at like design blogs all day and get inspired by that. But to me, that's like torture, because like I really don't like seeing what the wave of design influence is right now. Like I don't like seeing, oh, this is popular right now.
Right.
That really turns me off, and I really don't like that. And I think it's just because I'm more interested in trying to find a secret thing. And I don't think that there actually is a secret thing, because I think everything's been done already. But I think that for yourself and where you've been dropped into history, you have history before you, you have the future, and you're trying to find something that you can fall in love with and really grab a hold of and do completely earnestly, right? You don't want to do it because you're trying to mimic someone so that they'll like you. You're not trying to do it because it's popular and it'll sell. You're trying to do it because you're like, this is gold for my brain.
Right.
And I'm going to mine it till it's gone.
Yeah. This is the fuel that keeps me moving forward.
Yeah. And so his work kind of gave me a little bit of enough of the courage I needed to embrace these mediums, like just pencil, working from photos. So, photography is becoming a really important element to this work that I'm making, because I'm getting coffee with Mike. We're eating lunch. We were eating lunch like every day. We would go out and just find a place to eat. And we had this rhythm. And eventually our friend Benny, who was in QA testing at the time, would come with us, and we had this trio, and I would take photos of them while we're driving to the place, while we're walking, while we're eating. And Mike Wern is just such a beautiful subject. There's just something about his face to me, and he's got character, and his eyes and his glasses are iconic.
Right.
And
does he get it? Does he see what you see in him?
I would say no, because he's kind of, he was just baffled by it. And but he didn't not like it. Like, he thought it was cool. Like, he's just, because there's a point where he's just like, oh, Tom's doing his thing, he's taking his photo.
Right.
And like, eventually there's gonna be a piece for me to see.
So it's almost like that part of it became just integrated into the routine.
Yeah. And it was a beautiful era of harmony, I would say, with doing my like money work, where I'm animating for this company, but I'm taking breaks and staying healthy, and like staying healthy in the sense of like going for walks and eating lunch and hanging out with my friends and having conversations.
Right.
And then taking photos, and these photos are loaded with personal experience. Like, they are my life. They're not motivated by, oh, I just need to make art. It's like my life is happening and I'm making art, and it's this loop of recycled, or not, mutual momentum that's pushing into each one. And
I
and
love
it's
that.
just, it's perfect. And
one is not only inspiring the other, but it's fueling the other and sustaining the other as well.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And then I had this transitional processing time where this job was like an hour and a half commute from where I lived. So I would be on the bus or biking, and that created this quiet time for my brain to process everything in between. And I hated it. I absolutely hated commuting.
You hated the quiet time, or you hated the commute?
I hated the commute, and I hate sitting still. And I still hate it. And but I found that there's value in it, and there's value in meditating and sitting and letting your brain calm, And but anyways, back to the pieces. They just started. It was like a snowball, where I did like 5, and I'm like, I think I should start like a way to catalog this on Instagram. And then that just started changing the way I used Instagram and social media, because it was all of a sudden I was ready to embrace the idea of like making a series,
Right. Right.
And that was something I never did before, because I would get bored. Like, well, what's worth making a series about? Or why is this a group of artwork or a body? Like, I didn't really care. And all of a sudden I cared so much, and I was like, no, this is the daily Mike drawing.
Right.
And then I started experimenting. Well, how can I add the marker without it looking markery? Because if you draw with a marker, a Crayola marker, it looks like you drew with a marker. And I'm like, well, okay, how about I cut up little pieces of paper and shield the paper to make little shapes, and then put the marker on my fingertip and then stamp it with my finger or smudge. And then all of a sudden I'm like, holy shit.
That had to be just
Yeah, I was like, I can make a little piece of artwork here that I'm in love with, and I can do it at work.
right.
Because I mean, imagine having a whole like palette of paint at work. You would like get fired, right?
Yeah.
They'd be like,
right,
they would be
right.
like, why the hell are you painting at work?
Put that away.
You can't do this.
Right, right.
But I could have just some Crayola markers on my desk.
Right.
And,
nobody's going to say boo. Right.
And I could draw for, I could take a break for a half an hour and draw, and during lunch or whatever. And I mean, things were pretty chill at that job, by the way. I mean, they were really, I was always delivering. Like I got my work done.
So this never got in the way. The personal work never got in the way of the professional work.
And my immediate overseers were like into it.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was like, it added to morale because there were things happening here.
What's Tom doing now? Let me see the latest one. Yeah.
Exactly. It was like what's Tom up to? And like, oh wow, that one's better than the last one. Like,
so what was this first one?
There's one that sticks out to me as using the Crayola marker, but not necessarily the stamping technique.
Mm-hmm.
There's one really early on where it's a profile view of Mike, and he's got headphones on, and there's like there's only red, and it's like there's this one line coming down from the top right in front of his face, and his glasses are red, and then his shirt just has red vertical, almost strokes of red. And it's because this marker was dried out, but I found that there was actually a way that you could get a lot of quality out of a dried up marker. And it became more like a brush, like a paintbrush than like a foam nub, and I actually have that piece framed on my wall. I'm looking at it right now that I just mentioned. But and also I should mention, I started at this point using a brush marker, like a India ink Japanese brush pen.
Mm-hmm. One of the little water cartridge ones.
Yeah, but it was like one that it just comes with the little tiny ink capsules.
Okay.
That you puncture inside it. So that was opening up my work to having like really fine, precise graphic qualities. And I was kind of, early on, a lot of the mics have like black outline. Like I was kind of going for a comic, like graphic novel almost.
Right. Like they've all been inked up.
Yeah. Like I would pencil it, and then once I felt good about that, I would add some lines over it. And I was very inspired by the No Talking Please, which is a lot of his work is like that. But then there was a point where you can see the black lines gradually become thinner and thinner until they're just marks.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually they're completely, almost gone.
Right.
And now I'm using areas of color to show form and regions of, just areas of color. And
the evolution of this technique has been just as a viewer going through it, I have been enjoying so much seeing, the different iterations and how and going, what's he doing? Oh, okay. Is he doing this? Is he doing that? And seeing how you're working through different visual problems has been really exciting.
Awesome. Yeah, it's really fun for me to hear that. Like, I mean, because I've kind of just the whole time, like it's been years now since I started it, and I just had a mentality of head down, get to work, keep doing it. Don't worry about whether it's adding up to anything.
Mm-hmm.
Because I had this, like really strong faith that it was important. And I just felt like, well, I just need to trust that this is good in the long run.
Right.
And I mean, because I had the immediate gratification of knowing that Mike's my friend and I enjoy Mike, and these pieces are to celebrate that, you
Right.
know?
Right.
And so it's like you can't lose with
No,
that,
and
right?
had you began this with, well, what do I want this body of work to be? Where do I want it to go? What's my end? You have all these questions in the back of your mind, or at the forefront of your mind, even. It really does put a damper on where you go with it. It sounds like, anyway. So for you, just to, like you said, just head down. This is my goal, is to just keep doing these, and I'll worry about where they end up or what they become later.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it came out of all of it came out of of genuine appreciation for a human being, and I mean Mike in this case. And
sure.
And what happened was, if you look through my Instagram feed, you start to see other faces pop up,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not just Mike anymore. And I started drawing my brother Jason, and I started drawing Benny a little bit, and I draw my wife for friends. But then I also start drawing like random people from the internet, like people that once in a while I would put out a little thing on Twitter, like, "Hey, someone send me a selfie, I'll draw you," and kind of just starting to mix in different human beings, and it and I mean, fast forward, now it's been I guess 4 years or something.
Wow.
I don't know.
Wow.
And so it's actually not that long, but I'm still just drawing who I want to draw, and getting really into it, and like my process is still changing, and I'm still using markers, but I'm starting to use a lot more. I'm starting to add, because the process kind of peaked last summer, I'd say.
In what way?
I got to a point where I wasn't doing new kinds of versions. Like if you go to my site and look at my main drawings,
right,
they look uniform, right? I mean, most of them. Like you look at the page and it's like it's this literal body of like one style. And
so this isn't necessarily you assembling a series of like styled portraits. This is just the result of where you've been creating.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so I started hitting this weird mental wall where I think it crested, and it was actually around the time that someone approached me and asked me to have a show in October. So all of a sudden, I'm just head down, do the work for years. And then all of a sudden this person says, "We have a large space and we want you to do a show." And all of a sudden I switch into analyzing mode.
Right.
And I'm like, what is this work?
Well, yeah. What am I trying to say with this?
And what is the best work out of all of it?
And how do you even quantify that?
And what do I show, and how do I frame it? Like, what do I do?
Right.
And I realized that, and I was getting commissions, realizing that commissions were just it felt like a dead end to me, where I'm making some money, but the process, I feel like I'm trying to repeat a process, not it's like following a recipe rather than exploring.
You're making product, not art at that point.
Exactly. And I absolutely
I understand that.
Despised it. And and I still do, and it's really difficult for me, and I'm really having a hard time with commissions right now, because if I don't feel like if there's not a mutual agreement that I'm being paid to explore,
right,
I don't really want to do it. And there are exceptions, and there are times where I'm like, I really want to make a certain kind of portrait for a person that I know, and where I'm like kind of going down that like cooking follow recipe route. The process maxed out, and I kind of got a little bit jarred by it, and especially after my show, I kind of I nosedove into like a little bit of a artistic depression, where I was like depleted and just kind of like, wait, why do I do these, and where am I going with this? And
let me ask you something. Are you able to see, I mean, we may not as an audience or as a viewer, but are you able to see differences in the end result of something that you've done as a commission versus something that you've done based on someone you actually know.
Absolutely. And it's not one addition to what you just said is that I found that it actually doesn't have to be someone I know to make a drawing have that extra level of life to it.
What's the distinction?
Well, there is a level of mystery because there are times where I don't expect much from something and then something happens. And but I think part of it is having a genuine curiosity from the get-go. Meaning, for instance, say internet acquaintance X, like this person I know from the internet that I've never met before, posts a selfie, and there's something really vulnerable about it, and I see their eyes, and I see a human being that is vulnerable and kind of, like putting themselves out there in a way that's really beautiful and not pretentious. Like it might just be the pose, and it might be how I connect with the pose personally, because I just end up going down this curiosity trail where I want to squeeze all the life out of it, because when someone emails me and says, "Hi, how much does your portrait cost?"
That's just based on our conversation so far. That's got to be an instant turnoff to you.
Oh, I don't even know where to start. Like, I still don't know where to start. I've been personally writing response emails for the last year and a half, in the sense that I don't have a script that I respond to people with, and it's because the process isn't a script either.
Sure.
And even though I've gotten, I don't know how, I haven't counted, but all the inquiries I've got, I always respond thoughtfully because I'm trying to think through it. How can I humanize this process? And what's happened is there's been a few times where someone's like, "I love your work. I want to hire you." And I'm like, "Okay, cool. Well, I don't know what they're going to give me."
Right.
As far as an image to work with, because oftentimes 80% of my inquiries are out of state or out of, it's just from all over the world,
Right,
and
right.
I'm like, "Well, it costs this much." They're like, "Okay, cool." And then they send me the photo. I'm like, this photo won't work for me.
Right.
Do you have a better one? And they don't really know what I mean by better.
Yeah. What does better mean? Yeah.
So I have to explain that. But the truth is, I can direct them, but it's hard. You end up like you're a photographer all of a sudden. But then there are times where people send me a photo and they're like, "Can you draw me?" Sometimes I'm like, "Yeah, I'll draw you because this is beautiful," and I'll do it for free, and I love it, and it's most of my drawings are for free because I want to do them, and I love surprising people. I love the just stumbling upon feeds that selfies and Instagram feed that really strike me, and then I'll draw it and then I'll post it, and the people get tagged and they're just like, "Holy shit, you drew me, oh my gosh." And
right.
And it's hard because what the other weird thing that happens is when someone wants to buy it, and putting a price on it is bizarre, because it's like when I've drawn a person like that, they've given me something. And
now you've got to put a value on energy, basically.
And it's bizarre because I got into a weird situation once where I drew this dude and he said he wanted to buy it, and then we had a conversation where I put a little price on it, and he was weirded out by it. And
weirded out by the price or the fact that you would charge anything?
Well, I think that I would charge anything. It was confusing, and I still don't know what happened, and he doesn't respond to my emails anymore, so I'm kind of really bummed about it. But I was just trying to I just offered what I thought was a reasonable price, and kind of lower, a lot less than I charge now. But then it got weird, and I was like, "Oh." But then I did a drawing last week of a friend and surprised him from a selfie he posted, and he loved it. And I'm like, he's like, "I will buy it off you." And I'm like, I'll just send it to you. And then so I send it to him, and it's his. But I told him, "Hey, if you want to give anything, my PayPal's this.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that more, because then
what does it mean to you?
Yeah, it's in their court to establish what it means to them, and to kind of like when Radiohead, remember that really crazy time in like 2008 or whatever, when they released their album and
just said pay what you want. Yeah.
Pay what you want.
Right.
Like,
people went, what?
Yeah, and some people paid a lot and some people paid nothing, and some
right.
people, and I'm really intrigued by that. And it's part of it's, working with the right people, because if you work with the right people, you'll never be disappointed. And knowing who's the right people is the hard part.
Right. Well, especially when it sounds like, anyway, it so often comes unsolicited,
Yeah.
And it's got to be strange for you to have someone who has on their end connected so deeply with your work, and then they send you something and you go, doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
That's got to put you in a strange position.
Yeah, because I feel all of this very deeply. So when someone's like, can you draw me? Here's my photo. If I were totally cold and unfeeling, I would just be like, no, this won't work for me. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't, I guess I'm a wimp or something. I'm just like, I mean, I have told people that, I just don't know. I don't know. I don't really know what to say. I'm just kind of like, yeah, do you have another photo? And then,
have they all worked out, or have you had instances where it just didn't work out and you didn't end up doing anything at all?
Well, I always do the work, but sometimes the response isn't full. I had a friend who hired me, and I did the portrait, and I kind of struggled with it, but then I sent it to her, and she was like, "Oh, it's great," and then I mailed it, but then the next day she emailed me and was honest and said that, actually, I don't think it was good as the other work you've done. And I was like, you know what? I agree,
Wow.
And it was tough. And, and she paid me. It was really, I'm really glad she was honest about it. And it was awkward, but it was real. And the truth is, sometimes, my portraits don't hit the mark, and sometimes I'm not sure why. And I did one, sort of commission. Actually, he didn't pay me. I did it because I wanted to, but I ended up doing 3 pieces. And on the third one, it was like the right one. And but for normal commissions, I usually don't do more than 1 piece. I try to do it on the first try, and so it's kind of a lot of pressure when I'm being paid to do it, but when I'm doing it for myself, there's no pressure. So it's very confusing, Jeffrey.
It sounds like it. Yeah. It sounds tough being you, Tom.
But I don't know. Right now I'm kind of just trying to actually stay away from commissions, and I make money with animation.
Right.
And that's how I support myself. And then I do this work that I genuinely and like in love with, Well, it's like every time I do it, I'm falling in love with an image.
Yeah.
And yeah. So.
Well, going back a little bit to your drawings page, if this is starting to feel too similar for you, do you take time away, let something else kind of bubble up to the surface, or do you have to keep working to work through it into something else?
Well, I think you have to keep pushing, and you have to try new things, and because I got really precious with it, and that was detracting from the work, I think. I mean, the portraits are still like good, like I like them, but they lack the risk that my original portraits had. And when you start lacking the risk, I think you lack, the edge, the feeling that your pieces give. Now, no, but it's not all or nothing.
Sure.
Either, because it's
like it's incremental.
So, yeah, and but this year I'm getting into a really good rhythm right now of doing work that is different, and I don't know if you've seen my recent portraits, but they have a lot more. I'm adding more like white tempera or gouache, and I'm even in some cases going over the whole thing with white tempera and resetting it, but some of it shows through and adding layers in a new way. Because I used to only use ink, and that was a completely additive process, which was nerve-wracking when I would do commissions, because if I messed it up, if I accidentally got ink on my pinky and put my pinky in the middle of the person's nose, there was actually nothing I could do to take it back, except for, and this nowadays I put white tempera over it or gouache, and then I can kind of build on top of that, kind of like whiteout, I guess you could say.
Right.
But back then, it was like I would just sit for 5 hours adding ink to this paper, and then at the end I accidentally messed it up. I would be like, damn it, like it was so fragile. And I would just, oh man, it was nerve-wracking. But now I'm at the point where if I like royally add something or lay something down that I don't want anymore, I can add white back. It's like painting now. Instead of I would say my marker process is actually slow printing. It's literally putting layers of ink with my pad of my finger and building up little, mosaic in the sense that the pattern of my finger, the fingerprint, is creating like these strokes, and by layering all of those, it like having like a deep red, but then stamping a layer of blue on top of it. It's like screen printing a 3-color poster.
Where because it's all semi-transparent.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And sometimes things like mix a little bit, or they just sit completely cleanly on top of each other. And so now I'm kind of switching into a more painterly technique, but I'm still doing the same stamping ink stuff, but I can kind of mess with it now a little more.
Well, and that's one of the things that I love about seeing this new body of work is it's still, it's you at play. It's you, as you've said before, being childlike and exploring, but there is still that visual tie, not only back to Mike, but a tie to your body of work. This is still very much you, and that comes through.
Yeah, I'm glad that you can see that, because it's definitely still there. And there are times where I totally lose sight, and I'm kind of just, I have to not make art that day or something. But then I come back to like, I discover another like image on, my feed or whatever that makes me want to go down that road of discovery again. And it's like I'm being given something every time I see an image, and then I want to take that and then respond to it. Instead of just me going, oh, well, I should make a drawing because that would be good to make a drawing. Like it doesn't usually start that way. I'm usually responding to something or someone. And I mean, most of the portraits in the last year are just people that I kind of meet randomly. And then I snap a picture with my iPhone. And it's funny because I've realized, I actually was just thinking about this yesterday, I actually feel like I'm more of a photographer.
Interesting.
More like a photographer than an artist, because of the process and how it starts with an image. And I mean, I don't know, like in the sense that I don't really want to be commissioned traditionally. Part of me thought how cool it would be to be hired like for an event where I go and take pictures of people, and then I make 5 pieces.
Sure.
At home of my choosing.
Right. So the photographs are just your research material on site, and then you come home and create.
Yeah. Because I mean, that would but it's like someone hiring me to do this one portrait of their daughter or their brother, or for some reason, I mean, sometimes I can change how it feels by being there in person.
Sure.
Like taking a photo myself, or and that helps.
I love the idea though of it's this sort of roulette, this sort of creative roulette where they let you loose at an event. You may not come back with the primary or secondary people at the event. You may find interest in somebody completely unrelated to who hired you, and that's what you come back with because that's what struck you. That's the conversation you needed to have.
Yeah. Conversations are a big influencer in how I draw people too. And it's funny because like the photos don't have to be good either. Like I draw from bad photos. They don't, people get self-conscious. I take a photo with my iPhone and they're like fixing their hair or makeup. And I'm like, no, don't worry about it because like, I'm not like, I mean, it doesn't even have to be good lighting, but I mean, interesting lighting or really, even soft lighting is the best, but like, but interesting things can happen with drab photos even, it doesn't, it's just, it blows my mind that, it's like kind of like I'm doing a lot of experimentation right now with garbage, like taking plastic and the being able to take something that's bound for the trash and then use it to make something beautiful. Like what better thing is that to redeem something like that, and it's so fun to find beauty in unexpected places, I guess. But it's it's that weird balance of like delicate and like attitude, having a delicate handling something with care, but also thrashing it.
Right.
But yeah,
not being afraid to leave a mark.
Yeah. And because fear when I have anxiety about a piece, sometimes the work is good, but it's not a home run to me. And that's I kind of hate that feeling. Right. I want to be in love with the end piece too.
I'd like to thank Tom for taking the time to sit down with me for this episode. There was so much that we just didn't get to that we've already talked about doing another one, so stay tuned for that. I'd also like to thank John Keatley for the introduction. Another conversation with John is in the works. If you'd like to check out Tom's work, head over to his website at tomdeslongchamp.com. That's TomDeslongchamp.com, where you can buy select prints from his portrait series. You can follow him at Tom Thinks on Twitter, Instagram, and Vine, but I've got to warn you, if you start looking at his Vine animations, be prepared to be there for a while. Once you get into Tom's head, it's hard to get back out. If you like the show, you can subscribe on iTunes or in your favorite podcast app. And if you'd like to support the show, you can do that at jeffreysadoris.com. That's JEFFERYSADDORIS.com. You can also support the show by sharing it on Twitter or Facebook, or by leaving a review on iTunes. If you know someone who you think would make for an interesting conversation and can help put me in touch with him or her, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook at Jeffrey Sadoris. And again, thank you so much for listening to these. I hope you enjoy them, and I hope you'll come back for the next one.